right. We're now joined by 7Sage student Olivia, who has generously given us her time joining us. Do you want to tell the audience where you're joining us from, Olivia?
Sure, yeah, no problem. My name's Olivia, and I'm calling in from Accra, Ghana, based in West Africa.
Yeah, actually, this is a very international podcast today. Bailey, where are you joining us from?
This is an international podcast. I'm in Argentina, in Buenos Aires.
Yeah,
And
wow.
Alec
Wow.
is also located internationally, technically, from us.
Sure, internationally from you all. I'm in the United States of America, in Los Angeles. Yeah,
Three
Yeah.
continents. Pretty impressive.
That's
pretty impressive.
wild. That's crazy.
Yeah,
Good.
but there aren't. Yeah, challenge other LSAT podcasts to. Anyways, whatever. We don't. It's not a competition. So we're joined with Olivia, and we're gonna start a new segment. We are tentatively calling something like Diagnosis LSAT, Dr. LSAT. Actually, put in the comments what you think we should call this.
That's a good idea. We should crowdsource these ideas because unfortunately you can see our current ones.
Yeah. It'll be titled something by the time you're seeing this. But
that's a must be true.
But Olivia, give us a little bit of the context on just what your studying has been like up to this point, and then we'll get into your current situation and try and provide some solutions.
Awesome. Yeah, so I graduated about a year and a half ago now, and studied for like 2-3 months following graduation. Studied full time. Didn't really have the resources that I needed going into that study session. I was doing it like completely by myself. Took the August LSAT 2023. Did not get the score that I intended to. I think I changed up my entire strategy like day of the test. And then I was like, okay, I'm going to not look at this for
right.
about a year. Yeah, recipe for success.
Yeah.
And then so took a break from studying for about a year, came back to it May 2024. And I have been studying either full-time or part-time ever since then. So I originally was signed up for the September 2024 LSAT and actually pushed back my entire law school application cycle so I could have a longer study timeline. So I've been studying consistently since then.
That's awesome. I mean, wish you learned a lot along the way, but this
really helpful. Wait,
not
have
awesome
we?
Yet.
Yeah,
not awesome. No, it sounds. I don't know if
But
you already know this. That sounds so. Oh, you can,
no, go ahead.
We're
gonna say the same thing. I'm
it
sure.
Sounds so much like my study timeline, my own study timeline. I don't know if did we post that podcast yet? You're about to hear a very similar study timeline on the podcast when we talk about what I did and what I should not have done, basically. But honestly, it sounds like you did a good job, like taking a step back, and now you're getting into it, and you're just on top of it. So
yeah,
good.
That's what I mean by awesome. Like, obviously, it's like it's awesome that you're putting yourself in the best place to succeed, and it sounds like you're sort of okay with how this has unfolded because it's just like, gosh, it's just I don't have exact percentages, but I just know that more often than not, people either sort of quit well short of like what their goal is, or they do what you're doing, which is, taking the time to put themselves in the best position.
I've fully gone through all the stages of grief. I'm in acceptance.
Yeah.
My LSAT timeline is now indefinite. So
yeah.
That's fair. No, honestly, that's good. I was stuck in denial for so long, and I think that's part of what made my timeline extend even more. So you're doing the right thing now, and
I've also stopped telling people that I'm studying for the LSAT. I realize I'm tuning out every other stakeholder that was previously invested in my LSAT journey because I realized it was pushing so much pressure on certain dates or timelines that in the grand scheme of things really isn't necessary. So I've tried to, internalize as much of the process as I can. I think that's helped a lot.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah, I think like taking those, like, do whatever you need to do. Like, there's so much going on outside of the LSAT for everyone. Do whatever you need to do to like turn down the noise. Absolutely. Right. Yeah, cool.
Totally agree.
And what's your sort of study schedule looking like these days?
So my study schedule is I work from home 2 days a week. And on the days that I work from the office, I get up in the morning, study for about an hour and a half. because I know I'm a morning person. I can't study. Like when I get home, I'm exhausted. So the only times and then after work, I'll go to a live class if there are live classes there. It's a little less, little lower energy wise. And so then on my work from home days, I can usually fit in like 2 to 4 hours. Yeah, at least 3 hours during my like work from home days, because it's a bit more flexible. And on the weekends, I study like about 4 hours during the weekends. I usually try to take Sundays off because that's when I go rock climbing on Sundays. So yeah, and that's the schedule. I also currently have a 7Sage tutor, and so I meet with him sort of on an ad hoc basis.
Say his name.
Shout out Eric.
Eric H.
Eric H.
We were just talking beforehand. He's great, Eric Hugh, and he also teaches live class. So if it,
recommend, definitely recommend.
Absolutely. All right, cool, great. Okay, well, so why don't you pose your question to us about what sort of like, what's the big thing that you hope to get answered today, based on where you are, and what's the big, I don't know why I'm just sort of vamping. I feel like I'm saying a lot with very little substance. Give us the question you want to answer.
That's okay, because that helps me practice for RC. Like they say a lot of things, a lot of words, not much substance. So that's good for us. Go for
Olivia,
it, Olivia.
Shut me up. Just ask your question.
Say more words.
Dear Dr. LSAT, I'm in a plateau. I'm scoring about mid 160s, high 160s. Consistently for a long time now. And my scores have sort of leveled out to be slightly about like -3, -4 in LR, and between like -5 to -7 in RC. My analytics are also showing consistency across the different question types rather than one question type that's clearly detrimental to the overall score, so making it a little bit harder to drill effectively. And for RC, I think RC studying in general is a bit hard because you can't target specific question types as efficiently. So that has been a struggle as well, of trying to, other than like the techniques of low res summaries and retention drills, studying for RC has been challenging. And I actually only recently started adding RC to my wrong answer journal. So hopefully that's going to make a difference. But yeah, that's kind of where I'm at.
Awesome. Again, awesome that I keep saying awesome.
Okay, maybe
it's
I should be the one
to
who
know
responds.
The details. It's awesome to know the details. Awesome because I think we're going to be able to help.
So you're dealing with success stories that you're like, I don't know.
You are. Okay, this is not. You are a success story in progress.
Yeah, first of all,
you're doing great.
You killed it so far. Like that is crazy that you're where you're at now. Like I bet I don't know exactly where you started, but I'm just reminding myself that like when I was at that point in my studying and like I was about to break into the 170's, I think it was so helpful to look back on how far I'd come and been like, oh my gosh, you know so much more than you started. Like you thought this test was impossible when you started, and now it feels really possible. Feels really frustrating probably to get over this last hump, but like just first of all, pat yourself on the back. You did
good. Thanks, Bailey.
Absolutely, totally agree. And where did you start? What was your diagnostic? We should ask just out of curiosity.
Yeah. So my first like proper diagnostic was with the with logic games, because that was like still
true. So that probably
early
changed the score. Yeah.
So it definitely changed the score, and I was like too scared to, I'm gonna be honest, I was too scared to take a real diagnostic, so I was like, I don't want to know how bad I actually am. So I waited like a month into studying for taking a diagnostic, and at that point it was like about like 154.
Got it. Okay,
makes
cool.
sense. No, that's good.
Yeah. And what are you getting? You I think you said, but you're getting -3, -4 on LR per section, and what about RC?
For RC, it's somewhere usually between like maybe averaging -5 and -6.
Okay. And timing wise, how's it going in both of those?
So timing is usually quite good. On my last PT, not so much, but I was very distracted. So just let's not put that one into analytics. An outlier.
But it's good and that's good. No, like honestly, just not to deviate too much, but I feel like that's very healthy to be like, okay, this is like notice outliers and aberrations where they are. Like, yeah.
And I knew it during while I was taking it, like I knew it. I was like,
Right.
this is, it feels like a 164, and I got a 164. And I was like, oh my God. So
Hey,
my
I mean,
timing,
that means you have a really good gauge right now. So
Exactly.
that's
And
good.
also a good baseline. Like 164
Right.
is a baseline. You know, when you started
Right.
at a 154, like that's great. So you started at
Yeah.
154. Now you're like bad test, you know, is a
Right,
164,
which
Yeah.
isn't
10
that
point
bad.
higher.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
But so timing wise, you're going to say it's generally good.
thanks guys. Okay. So timing,
We're here to hype you up. Sorry, keep
timing
going.
wise is good. So I've been doing a lot of LR sprint drills. So like 10 and 10 or 15 and 15. That's made a huge difference. So I usually finish with about 3 to 4 minutes at the end of every section. I use Rahela's column strategy, and so I go back for round 2 for like priority question. So usually have time to visit like like 2 to 3 questions. Whether or not I get it right is like the question, but like usually if I visit a question that I just didn't understand the first time around, and I was like not even going to bother to look into the answer choices until I get a second look at it. Usually for those, I'm able to get it right again. If I spent like over a minute on the question in round 1, typically when I go back for round 2, it's a lost cause, unless like I missed something completely the first time, or if it's just a long and must be true with quantifiers or something like that. Yeah, and then for RC, finishing usually exactly like no time left over, like finishing the last passage. But my timing distribution for RC is definitely something I want to work on. I'm spending too much time on the first 2 passages, and typically my missed questions for RC are interestingly distributed equally across the 4 passages, regardless of difficulty. So even if it's a 1 or 2 star passage, I'll still miss like 1 or 2. And if it's a hard 5-star passage, I'll still only miss like 1, max 2. And except for the last one, don't look at the last one. So yeah, and so that's something I definitely want to fix, because I'm like, why am I still missing these easy RC like 1, 2 star passages?
Okay. Great. That's all very useful information. And one thing that I just want to highlight is like you've spent a lot of time thinking about this clearly and drilling into it on your own, which is great, which is like the first step, you know? And
Alex, I'm actually selling my wrong answer journal when this is over. It's a dissertation.
Yeah.
It is.
That's
an
hilarious.
Gigantic Excel sheet.
That's crazy.
Great.
Good.
I mean,
I actually would screen share that if you guys want to see. It's kind of beautiful.
Please.
I'm actually kind of curious.
Yeah.
Okay.
Show us.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Soft flex.
No, I'm so excited. I love stuff like this.
This is something Eric helped me develop a little bit as well. He gave me some like templates to work with. And it has been so great for pattern recognition with LR.
Maybe we can put that is it like a standard template? I can also get it from Eric, but we can put it in the description or
it's not a standard template.
Yeah, it sounds like it was kind of proprietary, and you should be paying her for this. I don't know.
Well, no, I mean, is it Eric's?
She's Eric helped. I don't know. This seems like her. This is crazy.
Yeah, that's fair.
That's awesome.
Your PTs. Wait, sorry. Can you see my screen?
Yep.
Okay. So the section, the question type is just like a drop-down menu for all of them. The correct process, what I actually did, what I should have done, and then key frameworks that are missing. So like if it's causal reasoning.
I always read causal as casual.
I too. Everybody does. It's like the one that everybody does.
Yeah.
Casual reasoning.
Yeah.
It's like the opposite of logical reasoning.
Exactly. Yeah.
Right. And it's just so casual. That's my reasoning. Good.
Yeah, so like if I'm
this is
able
awesome.
to say, okay, there's like a phenomenon hypothesis as well. Some of these are the actual tags in 7Sage, and some of them are like my own frameworks applied. So yeah, I've just put these in for all of them. I'll map out specifically. And yeah, it's a big boy document.
That's so cool. And is it organized? How do you organize it? By PT or like just in order of when you get it?
New drills is all This is chronological in terms of when I've done it. And then I have once I revisited it. So I wait a couple weeks before revisiting the question, and I revisit every single one. And I say, yes, I revisited it, got it correct and understood it. No, I have not revisited it yet. I got it correct, maybe because memorization, but I still don't really understand it.
Okay. Wow.
Crazy.
Yeah,
That's awesome.
this is so
I love
great.
this.
And it's
I'm
huge.
jealous.
Like,
I'm like
still
teeming with
scrolling.
jealousy right now.
Yeah. Awesome. And maybe
Yeah,
we
that's so
can
cool.
do you mind if we tab over to your analytics for a second?
Yeah, sure. Let me share this tab.
Perfect.
Can we start at the top?
Yeah, I'm curious. First off, honestly, if you want to get rid of the last PT, you totally can. Like, that's one nice thing about these analytics is like, you could just like unclick whatever you think is like, yeah, exactly. If it just goes down. No, honestly, it's not bad though. Look, it's pretty similar to before.
So just so everyone knows, if you're at home, like this is the 7Sage analytics page. Although for now, we are coming out with a new website, so it will change like sometime. Yeah, very exciting. It's very aesthetically pleasing. We'll probably be showing some of that on the videos sooner rather than later, but we don't have analytics up on it yet. But so this is your actual score and your blind review score for what date is what date range are we looking at here?
Oh, good question. Well, this is
August
3rd.
And how often are you taking PTs now?
So I was not taking them very often. So the 17th, 21st. Now I'm trying to take them like one a week. Previously, I was like not taking them as frequently because I was finishing the core curriculum at the same time and like was doing actually more drilling. Something I actually want to implement now is going to like the really, really early PTs. And even though I've done like almost all of those questions in drills, I want to retake them as PTs for timing practice.
Absolutely.
Perfect.
What date was that high? The 171. Not
this
the 178. The
171 from there.
September.
Do you want to? This is very tragic. This is the date I was supposed to take the September LSAT.
What?
And I withdrew less than like 24 hours before like the deadline because I was like, I'm not ready. And I scored this.
And then when was the next one?
Hold on. No. We got to stay there for a second. I want to know what was going on in your brain before you sat down for that test. Like, did you just go take that test, like, because you were like, why not? Like, let's just see what happens? Or because potentially a lot of it was mindset that brought you there. Sorry,
I was in a program. I was in a program that like mandated that I take the test at a certain time. And that's why I had signed up for that date. And then I realized I was like, actually, Bailey, I listened to your advice because you said don't take it unless you have 4 PTs under your belt consecutively that are at or around your target score. And I was like, well, I don't. So I should withdraw. And so I made a last minute decision to withdraw.
Well,
and postponed my entire life plan for a year. So thank you.
Okay, that's funny because it's still good advice, but like, okay, so wait, just tell me again. So like you took this PT instead of taking the actual test on that day just for funsies? Like, why'd you do that?
The same day. Because integrity, I don't know. Like,
okay, cool. No, okay, that's because that's what I'm trying to get some insight into right now. Like when you were going into that test, were you just like, okay, I'm just going to take it? Like, were you putting a lot of pressure on yourself to perform really well? Or were you just like, let's just see what happens?
Well, I had made the decision that I'm not going to apply to law school unless I score the median of my target school. And that's still the truth. And so I was not scoring at that target median. So I was like, I'm more wedded to the score than the deadline. So I was willing to push it back.
I think a couple of things that I'm thinking. First of all, like I think your reasoning across the board is sound. Like it's really important to go into this test with a plan. Because the answers to these questions are different for different people. Maybe some people are like, no, like there's a range of scores. If I get this score, it just means I'll target different schools, right? And other people like yourself, where it's like, this is the plan, and like I don't really want to do this unless I get these things. And more important, there's no correct answer to these. There's no universally correct answer. What is important is that you have the answers for yourself, because then that takes the guesswork out of all these decisions. So it's great that you have such. And to listeners at home, like if you don't have answers to these questions for yourself, like think about them, because a lot of times when people are deciding, like, they haven't thought this through. So they don't actually have a target score. They're like, I'd love to score as high as I can or something like that. And it's like, no. Like, obviously that's true for everyone, right? But there are reasons why a target score is important, because it dictates your study schedule and all these things. And it helps you answer these questions in the way that you have. So another thing is like, obviously you ended up scoring, having a great score on that day. But I still think this, first of all, one of the reasons why you want to score above your target score is because it's different sitting down for the actual exam than it is taking a PT, right? So the reason we just see on average people score a little bit below their averages once they sit for the actual test. So, no guarantee how you would have done on the actual exam. I don't think like seeing that score is like, oh, you made a mistake, you should have taken the test that day. It's if anything, it's just like, okay, that's a great score. Like,
I was like,
great,
okay, good to note, and let's move on.
Yeah.
What? No. Hold on. I'm so sorry. I really need to know exactly what your mindset was going into that test. Like, do you remember sitting down for that PT? Were you putting pressure on yourself? That's my main question here, because honestly, I think that probably a lot of what's going on is like maybe just this extra pressure to perform in a certain way. And if you were able to do that on that day when you probably weren't expecting to like do super well, I don't think we should move on from that. I think that's actually like, you kind of want to tap into that mindset and see if you can replicate it somewhere else. Does that make sense?
Definitely. Yeah. I had made the decision to withdraw, but I still wanted to I was like, I might as well just sit down, take the PT at that designated time, because I've already like carved out this time in my schedule. So there was significantly less pressure. I think also I've been studying like I think since May is almost like eight months or so from now, or more than that, like 10 months. And since I took so few PTs over the course of that time period, every PT has felt really high pressure, because it's like, well, I've been studying for weeks before this next PT. So if I don't see that manifest in a higher score, I'll be discouraged. And I think pressure is definitely a significant factor.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and I mean, I ask a lot of that because that was part of what was keeping me kind of in a plateau. And so when I was especially in the 160's, like kind of right where you are, and I had gotten up, like maybe I had broken the 170's once, but like I don't even know if I had the same sort of setup. I just really kept putting so much pressure on myself every single time that I sat down for a PT. I also wasn't doing them pretty consistently, so I'm glad that you're getting into this weekly PT thing now. But I think that changes a lot, especially when you've been studying for that long, and especially when you really know your stuff. Like I can tell from like even just from looking at your wrong answer journal, you know your stuff, you know what you're doing. It's more so strategy and mindset at this point. And so I want to get more insight into like what you're doing when you're going through these PTs. What are you doing differently on time practice? We can talk more about like how to get your timing down for RC. Actually, I have some ideas on that too before I forget, but I'm trying to think where to start.
Between 118 and 131, the 171 and the 165, how much time passed?
Sorry, 118 to when?
The 171 to the from the 171 to the next one.
Test.
Oh, okay. So this was September 6th, and this was October 8th. So about a month.
Okay, great. So just also, I'm realizing some people are probably listening to this. So this is from your high score that you took on the day that you were supposed to take the test that we've discussed to the next time you picked up and started, taking PTs again. So I'm guessing like, okay, so about a month passed, and what happened during that month study wise?
So since I'm based internationally, I had to travel home to take the LSAT in person. Or not in person, but in the U.S. So I flew back, started working full time, and I took about a week off after I took the sit down test, or fake test, pseudo test.
Yeah.
And then started studying again a week after.
Okay, got it. And what's the cadence been like since then? Like roughly weekly?
In terms of taking a PT?
Yeah.
No,
No,
it wouldn't have
no.
started being
Or she
weekly
just recently.
until I guess December. Yeah, end of November to I guess December started to like be more weekly. Yeah, very recently.
I want to say too, like looking at your analytics, there's this like trend line up to the 171 where it's like, wow, like you're really if you're not looking at it at home, you know, it's like, wow, it's just one after the other going up and up and up to 171. And then
Yeah.
a month goes by and you drop, you know, you drop down to like 165, another 166. And so I know, like, if you look at my analytics, a similar thing happened where I went up and then I just sort of stopped. And I don't know if that's what happened for you, but I really just like kind of was like, I took my foot off the pedal a little bit. And I don't know if you had that or not, but and then it just like dropped. And I sort of thought, well, this is like riding a bike. Like as soon as I pick the bike back up, I'll be exactly where I left it. And it wasn't like that. So I don't know.
Yeah.
Does a similar thing happen?
Yes, definitely. And so, I mean, you can also see for my first test post finishing the core curriculum, which is this first one, was my second highest score.
Yep.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was quite discouraging, I think, seeing that this is what I scored like before ever really even starting doing PTs. I was like, oh, I should only go up from here. And as you can see, it has not only gone up from there. So that was quite discouraging. But the reason of this continuous upward trajectory is because I was on sabbatical. And so I had full time. I was studying full time, like 6-7 hours a day, nothing else. Very like disciplined, like routine. I had no distractions. I deleted social media, everything. And since coming back, now I work full time. So I had to like adjust my schedule. Life happens, etc. And so there's just been other things that I've had to like distribute my time. So instead of studying like 6 hours a day, I only study like 2, max 4 hours a day.
Well, the good news is I think that all that this shows me is that you're capable of doing it. And I don't think you need the 6 hours a day to get there. Right. And I think what Bailey was sort of getting at, you know, you've done a lot of the work that is sort of our necessary conditions to succeed. Right. Like you're thinking about these things in depth. You've created like just a very rich database for yourself of wrong answers. Like you're doing you're crossing all your T's, dotting all your I's. And now I do think we should talk a bit about your mindset, because I imagine, you know, and maybe Bailey, if you want to ask the follow-ups that you were thinking about.
Oh, okay. I don't know them yet.
We took so much time to let you think about what your next questions were.
Sorry.
Well, here,
okay.
let's start. Just okay.
You can go.
I guess before we do that, let's start with like let's like cross off all the boxes that are like just sort of like the nuts and bolts of the test. Like, so you're getting minus. Let's scroll down a little bit and look. So you're saying like your misses are sort of like across. If you can go down to the LR. Okay, yeah. So,
this.
Yeah. That's great. So yeah. So it looks So it looks it looks like.
Wait, honestly, for this to be more accurate, I would probably go back up and choose the most recent 3 PTs, because this is showing you what you're bad at from every single PT you've ever taken.
That's true.
So
how do you do
scroll
that?
all the way back to the top.
Go up.
Yeah, let me show you. This is going to be so helpful. Go top, and then on that currently showing 16 of 16,
tap
you're
to
going to
edit.
Tap to edit right at the end of the list. Or there. Yeah.
Just do 5 recent. You can click 5 recent at the top. There's the button 5 recent.
Okay.
Yeah. Because that's December through. Yeah.
Yeah, that should be a lot more accurate as to like where you're actually missing questions these days. And it might still be kind of a similar even distribution, but let's see if that changes anything.
Yeah, good call.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. This is helpful. Yeah. And so, I mean, like with this accept right away, like we see, so first of all, by the way, what we're looking at right now is this is 7Sage Analytics prioritizing which question types in each section you are not so good at. It's not only taking into account your actual accuracy, that's like how many you're getting right and wrong, but also comparing it to this expected accuracy, which is based on where other people are scoring in the same range. And then they're also checking in on the number of expected questions per test. Is this news to you?
This is,
Or did you know that?
Blowing my mind
okay, cool.
Right now.
Okay, cool. So
or just
basically,
the
it's like a
time
little
change.
robot.
Yeah.
Oh. It's
No, I was
like
wondering, is the
robot.
part that's blowing your mind just like changing the range of tests? That part you're talking about?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
I was like, I know my must be true is is way better than this. It shouldn't be like on my weekend, especially like I worked to improve that. So this feels much more accurate. And honestly, I
this
think
is accurate.
what this is telling me is that I think when I first finished the core curriculum, I like had all of the foundationals, but I hadn't developed like question type strategies. And so I was more flexible with approaching question types. And this is showing me, okay, accept is wrong. My miscellaneous is, I'm terrible at miscellaneous questions because they don't follow a specific question type strategy. So I think it's showing to me like I've lost a lot of that like flexibility with approaching questions that might not fit in like the typical box.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that makes sense. I also think, having strengthening and PSAR there, I mean, the good news is they're similar. PSAR is just like all, like sufficient assumption, and necessary assumption. It's just a specific way to strengthen. So, I would drill down there, think about, look at some of those missed questions. Look for if they're, you have this wrong answer journal where you're labeling them not only by question type, but also by some of the underlying concepts. That's where the wrong answer journal is so helpful, because now you can look and see, okay, of these strengthening and PSAR questions, like, are there other through lines that are presenting themselves, or for the accept questions and the miscellaneous questions as well? Like, is there something else going on here that has to do specifically with the way that I'm strengthening arguments? So that's where I think your wrong answer journal and the process you've instituted over there can really help. You have other thoughts, Bailey?
Yeah, I just want to add some context to this really quick. So like for the accept questions and the miscellaneous, you've only seen 6 of them over the course of these PTs that we're looking at. Or 6 accept and then 3 miscellaneous.
Yeah,
so just remind yourself too, that doesn't mean that you're terrible at miscellaneous questions. It just means that out of the 3 you've seen, you got 1 right. So yes, hone in on those, but also focus just on like big picture. I like that it's prioritizing these strengthen and PSAR, because the last thing I was going to say in terms of like how they prioritize this for you is they're not just taking into account what you're not so good at. They're also taking into account how many of these questions are you likely to see on the actual exam. So that's why it's like strengthen PSAR. Right. You're not terrible at those, but you get a little bang for your buck by getting really good at those.
Miscellaneous, like you have, comparatively low accuracy at 33%. But you're likely to see 1 at most on the test. If
don't spend as much time there, but could be a helpful drill that you want to do. And like, I like that idea of maybe, going at it with the approach of making sure that you're adaptable. Your mindset is allowed to change just based on whatever question they're asking you, regardless of the question strategy. This is hopefully going to be helpful to like start here.
Mm-hmm. So I think one thing we've learned is that like maybe there is a little bit more that you can do under the hood, in terms of like prioritizing question types than maybe you realize. Like, if you look at that kind of flattened out view, it looks like roughly the same. But maybe actually at this stage, there are some clear areas that you need to question types that you might want to prioritize and look at. I mean, and with accept questions, that just crosses across. That's every question type, that then you throw accept into. So go ahead.
I just wanted to add in a quick hack for accept questions, because I think that a lot of people need something like this. Accept questions is literally just any question, but they're giving you the exception to it. So what I do is it takes maybe an extra few seconds, but it's worth the investment of time. I'll literally rephrase what the question is saying in my own words so that I can remind myself, you're eliminating answer choices that blank. Like if it's a strengthen accept, I'm going to be like, okay, Bailey, you're eliminating answer choices that strengthen. You're choosing answer choices that weaken or do nothing to the argument. And honestly, it's worth that extra, like, just pause, kind of talk it through all the way to yourself and give yourself that same pointer that you would probably normally give yourself question strategy wise, but turn it into its accept version. And also remind yourself, like for strength and accept, it's not just you're looking for a weakener, you're looking also maybe for something that doesn't do anything to the argument. And there's a lot of other question types with accept that maybe people just aren't going into the answer choices with that pre-phrase of, okay, I know what I'm looking for, I know what I'm eliminating. So try that there. Anybody can try that. And then, keep going.
Take a look at RC. We have a recent test pulled up. So we're going to use that as kind of our case study to talk about how RC is going for you, Olivia. So this one, second to last test you took, right?
I believe this is third to last test. Yes.
Third to last. Okay, great. Bailey, what do you want to take a look at here?
Okay, yeah. So I wanted to see the distribution of questions and also just like timing distribution. Can you mouse over the timing? Like, yeah, perfect. And then just stay there for a second.
So, and just for context for people, if you're listening, you might want to pull this up on YouTube.
You should watch this. You should totally watch this.
It's
It's gonna make so much more sense.
But I'll give you context. I'll give you context for what we're looking at on 7Sage. We have on the analytics, we have a bar. I'm using my hand as if that would translate.
Yes, this is so going to make sense to the listeners.
No, but basically what we're looking at is the time that Olivia spent on each question, and if it's above or below the target as the algorithm has determined.
Right.
Oh my gosh.
And oh no.
My Siri picked that up.
I just want to see like what I like how your Siri calls you Alexander instead of Alex.
That was a first, actually. Yeah.
Interesting. She's learning. Okay, so I wanted to see like how long you're spending on each passage, because like here doesn't seem like 6 minutes total on passage 1 is actually a really good pace. Let me see where like just overall your timing was distributed across the passages.
So the first passage, first
just
one
under
thing
7.
too, just to bring everyone up to speed from what we talked about before, Olivia notices that you tend to be missing a similar amount of questions across each passage, regardless of where it is, regardless of difficulty. So the test we're looking at now, the first passage is a 1-star difficulty. The second passage is a 2-star difficulty. The third passage is a 5-star difficulty. What's the fourth passage if you had scroll down? 4 stars.
4.
So,
okay.
Yeah. Okay.
And this is a good example, definitely, of like just the natural, or not necessarily that natural, but average, I'd say, distribution of RC. In general, the first 2 passages are going to be a little bit easier. They might not be actually like that. That seems like these ones were objectively a lot easier. But in general, first 2 passages, you want to be spending a little bit less time on so that you can save yourself more time for those ones at the end.
But
so
it also
we're going
seems
to
like you have a fairly accurate perception of like what you said at the beginning seems to hold true for this test,
right.
Which is that, you got 1 wrong on the first passage, so pretty good. But then 3 wrong on the second, I think 2 wrong on the last 2, on each of the last 2. So your worst passage was the second one, which is a 2-star difficulty, not nearly as hard as the last 2. Sorry, go ahead, Olivia.
Exactly. And I think that in terms of timing, this PT looks like it was moving a bit quicker for timing. I think I go sort of in a pendulum between if I end up missing early easy questions in RC, then I slow down and for on the next PT or the next RC section, then I take too much time at the beginning and then end up missing like more later questions. And I'm trying to find a balance between not, like you said, like taking a lot of time here, but still missing a 1-star, but still saving time for like harder passages down the line.
Right. Because like technically what happened here is you maybe could have invested a little bit more time in your passage 2 so that you made sure that you got those points that were maybe more low-hanging fruit at that point. But it's so hard to know in the moment. Like, would you have known in the moment, oh no, I need to spend a little bit more time here? Maybe, maybe not. And so we can talk about those indicators, like how aware you are that you're doing well or not during the RC section. But I do want to remind myself to say this before I forget, that I think overall my best advice for like keeping yourself at a pretty good pace for RC is giving yourself a halfway point to move on. And so for myself, I noticed that I was just spending a disproportionate amount of time on my first 2 passages. I used to just like write notes all over my wrong answer journal. Girl, move faster. But that wasn't really helpful, because did it tell me exactly what to do to move faster? No, I was just like freaking out, panicking more, made me move slower. So as soon as I was like, okay, you need to move yourself along to the 3rd passage by about the 15-minute mark. Like distributing yourself overall about 15 minutes total for the first 2 passages is going to give you 7.5 minutes for each passage. I mean, honestly, it would have given you an extra 1.5 minutes from what you used in this case. And then you are still moving yourself along. So you have 10 minutes total, 20 whole minutes for those last 2 passages, or 10 minutes total for each new passage at the end. So I'd start with something like that. And I started trying to just tell myself to like, you have to move on. But in order to train yourself to get to the point where like you can trust yourself to move on at that point, that's why I recommend these like first 2 RC passages and 15-minute drills, or last 2 passages and 20-minute drills. You like break down different sections, even ones that you've done before, but just do ones that you've seen least recently. And just start training yourself into the habit of like, I just have 15 minutes for the first 2. I have 20 minutes for the last 2. Thoughts?
Right. Yeah, Olivia, I think it's really good advice. I've heard previously the advice of you have to save 20 minutes for the last two passages, but I've never actually contextualized that in doing 2 passages in 15-minute drill sets to practice.
Right.
So I think that's quite good advice, and it's just going to be about, for me, like when I have to go back to the passage versus when I have to just like rely on like retention. Frequently also I find that if I am unsure about an early question, if I skip it in the moment and come back to it at the end of that passage and then go back to it for like a couple seconds, it clicks into place. Similarly to like a round 2 on LR. So I think skipping for on the easy ones, maybe it's not such a great strategy for like the 4th passage because it's a time sink. But earlier on, like sometimes when I do that, it does help.
Yeah.
No, that makes sense. And I always just remind myself, like, if I'm going to skip, I want to try to skip early on in the timing. So if you even just give yourself an indicator, like, okay, at the moment that I realize I don't know where in the passage to get my answer, I don't even know a prephrase. I'm like,
you mean
panicking.
Early on in the question process? Like
oh yeah, sorry. Like right away. Yeah. If I'm going to skip, I'm going to skip fast. If I'm going to, answer it, I'm going to try to answer it also with the about less than a minute for each RC question, basically.
Yeah. So if you have the inkling that you want to skip,
just like go for
take
it.
Do it. I also think it's important to note that you did get these questions right on blind review, so it's like, I think it adds more evidence to the fact that, like,
it's a timing issue.
It's a timing issue, right? And you got, specifically if you can't see at home, like, so you missed, if you're not watching at home, if you're listening, if you missed the people who are listening, not, okay, anyways, whatever, yes.
Thank you so much for clarifying.
So, you got 4 questions wrong in the first half and 4 questions wrong in the second half. You got all of the questions in the first half correct on blind review, and none of the questions in the last half correct on blind review. You didn't
blind review a lot of them. Yeah, that's a good point.
You didn't revisit them.
I didn't revisit I think for this one, I've started now blind reviewing like the entirety of RC passages, but I think at this point I was only blind reviewing my flag. So I wouldn't have had a chance even to like identify these right, particularly like 26 seconds, right? Like I was clearly more confident than I was an overconfidence error.
Yeah,
Got it.
That's
that
good
makes
to
sense.
know. I mean, and honestly, like, I think that only reviewing the flags is like, that's the approach that I would take. I think it's okay to do what you're doing, but I don't think that everyone has to do that. I think just reviewing the flags is generally what we recommend. I'm not going to say you can't review everything. It's just there is something to there's something to be said about just reviewing the flags, because it's also indicating to yourself what you actually thought was wrong and what you weren't. So listen, if you want to revisit the whole passage, that's fine. There's utility in that, but I would pay attention to which questions did I flag, and because that's important too. Because like what you're noticing here about question 20, which is a 4-star question on a 4-star passage, you did it in 26 seconds. You didn't flag it. You thought you knew the answer, and more power to you, but you didn't. so
that happens to me so much.
But it's
yes, exactly. It's like done.
Yes. So even if you are going to review, for the most part, I would advise people just to blind review the questions you flagged, because, I mean, honestly, it's just people get burned out, like doing too much. Now, that's not everyone. It sounds like it's working for you. So, blind review the whole passage. That's totally fine. But I would still pay attention to which ones you flagged and if you got those right or wrong,
Definitely.
Yeah. And I always remind myself too, like, if I didn't notice it during blind review, that's totally okay. It's not like I lost. It's like, okay, I'm going to spend a little bit more time here on my wrong answer journal. So you're great at your wrong answer journal, and you just started doing it for RC, which is good. And so I think that just spend a little bit more time with these ones, and also start giving yourself takeaways of like, how do I know to be a little bit more cautious? Or like, how do I know that maybe I should have flagged something like that? Which, really quick, strategy wise, when you're going through RC in real time, are you fully eliminating 4 answer choices and choosing one for a reason? Or like, what does that look like mentally?
Yeah, I think it varies. There's definitely some degree of inconsistency with that POE strategy. So sometimes I think for RC, particularly for like most strongly supported style, like implied questions in RC, I'm hesitant to eliminate right off the bat answer choices because they might just be like more subtle. And so half the time, if it works, it means that I'm reading them through until I find one that like clicks with like my the logic or the pre-phrase that I had when I like sort of developed criteria for the question stem itself. But in other times, like I find that it's sort of like halfway ground between hunting and picking and going, and like reading word for word, like being very critically evaluating each single answer choice. And so sometimes if I fall into that middle ground, it's to my detriment.
I feel you. I mean, I'd say that your job when you're doing these timing drills that I'm telling you to do for RC, like the first 2 passages, the last 2 passages, is just tell yourself, my job is I have to eliminate 4 answer choices for a reason. I have to choose one. And in order to do that in that time and also like get everything done in that time, it's just like you're going to have to trust yourself. Like just do yes or no's going down those answer choices. If you need to give yourself a few more, like, I don't know, maybes at first, I mean, allow yourself to. But honestly, what I do for RC is I'm like, yes or a no on every answer choice. I get 1 or 2 maybes across all those 5 answer choices per question. And as long as you're just like giving yourself evidence-based reasons why you're making these decisions, might feel like you can't quite do all of that in the time right away. But as you keep doing these timing drills and just like implementing that, I think it'll come together. Because the inconsistency thing, I'm glad that you said that. That was also my problem. I was just not doing the same thing every time. And I think there's just at least a couple little strategies that you want to boil it down to where it's like, I'm going to do this every time. And there's no way that they can throw something at me that I'm not going to be prepared for in that sense.
Yeah.
Right. And so when you say like deriving evidence, like I'm eliminating something for a reason, is that reason from your memory or is that going back to finding like quick textual support?
Yeah, so that's the part where RC is kind of a balance, but I'm a big fan of getting familiar with where details live in the passage, like reading for structure, reading for what is the purpose of this paragraph, what's the purpose of this one, so that when they ask me a really nitpicky, detail-oriented question and it's an inference, for example, it's not like I am just trusting my memory. I know exactly where in the passage to go back to and find my evidence. Sometimes I'm able to find that word-for-word evidence really quickly, but what I make myself do to like be like, okay, did I use an evidence-based reason to eliminate this answer choice? Is I'll get out my orange highlighter when I'm going down those answer choices, and I just use that to indicate to me red flags. And there's usually a word or a phrase in every single answer choice that you can choose that like just isn't accurate about the text. A lot of times for myself, I'm just allowing myself to go back to the text and double check it really quick because of how I read in the first place. So hopefully that makes sense.
Yeah, the other thing I'd say because more general advice to everyone is like, it like the ability to go back to the text is kind of something that you earn for yourself over time. Like
exactly,
it really depends on your timing. And so like looking at like general advice is most people don't yet have time to go back, right? That it's like you're actually going to do better on the test if you don't go back, right? But this is where we always talk about it as like public health recommendations, where it's like, it's like they say like take 2 ibuprofen. Well, it's like a lot of people can take 3 ibuprofen and it'll be fine. But like, you want to give the advice. We're going to
tell everybody to take 2.
The most, that would like be helpful for the most amount of people. And for the majority of people, like you don't really have time to go back, right? And that's not to say that you can't get to a point where you can go back. Because Olivia, when we look at your timing, like you do have a little bit of time to go back, and you should use that where you can. But it's like it's the nuance of the LSAT that is something. And the mistake that a lot of people make is that they have to that their strategy won't change. That like they have to use the strategy of a XYZ scorer instead of recognizing, well, where I'm at right now, I don't have the time to go back. And I need to rely on my memory, and I need and then understanding that like, okay, like in 2 months, I might be in a place after following the strategy where I'm a lot faster and I can go back. So for where you are, Olivia, I think you can start to build in time if you know where those things are to quickly verify.
Totally agree.
Just to bring it, just to take the specific advice, because we're sort of shifting in between what the
right. No, and I think that's really Sorry. Hopefully people are like people who might be in a similar boat as you, Olivia, are going to get something out of this episode. But we also want to make sure that like everybody's getting something out of this episode. So really just make sure that you're catering your strategies to where you're at and you're studying. And just because you're doing something now doesn't mean that you're going to be doing it forever.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah. In general, in life, That's good life advice.
Should we get deep?
This too shall pass. Nothing is permanent, and that's good or and bad.
Right. It's all fleeting.
Okay. Anything else we want to touch on RC? Do you feel like you got what you need, Olivia? Questions?
Yeah, I guess is the only feedback for like these missing early questions, like the 2 under 15 drill, or?
Well, so one thing is that I'm wondering when you do more of those drills, like maybe your RC overall isn't quite as like I don't think that this RC path or this section is reflective of where you're at right now in RC, at least based on those most recent 2 PTs. So like first things first, start doing those drills, just see how it works out accuracy wise. But my biggest advice for accuracy is the eliminate 4 answer choices, choose 1 for a reason. So you got to go down those answer choices, yes or no, give yourself 1 maybe or something, and just see how that works for the first place. Then it looks like there's probably more nuanced issues that you might be having with like, it is looking like there's a good amount of implied questions, like the inference type questions that you're missing here at least. And I think that a lot of those, it just has to do with like, do I know where to get my evidence in the passage? Am I able to go back in that time? Yeah, because it's like implied. Yeah. So anyways, I think that the overall like structuring your read of the passage, that you know where the details live, but you're not overwhelming yourself while you're reading in order to like memorize all of those details. That's my overall advice for like getting these last few points, which seem to be a lot of inference. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So yeah, starting off with like more stricter integrity to like the POE procedure at the easier, like earlier passages, and then giving more of that like flexibility later in for harder passages where POE might not be the default, if like you're not having words that are automatically disqualifying language, like you mentioned.
True. And it will be easier in those first 2. But I can't emphasize enough that I think you should be doing that same exact eliminate 4, choose 1 for a reason strategy throughout the entire section. It might feel like that you just don't have the time or you can't fully do that. And like I leave open a couple answer choices sometimes with the harder questions at the end. But I think the more that you hold yourself to some sort of uniform strategy where it's like, I'm making evidence-based decisions. I'm like, because for example, I first thought of this when you chose that main point answer choice that was like the trap answer, but it was D and the right answer was A. I'm like, did you eliminate A? Did you have a reason to eliminate A?
Right.
Because there wasn't an evidence-based reason to eliminate A. So that's why I'm like everywhere, all over this test, eliminate 4, choose 1.
So very frequently in RC, I'm getting down to like a 50-50, and I don't know as much like if I'm able to. It might take longer for me out of 50-50 to find that evidence. And so what would you recommend like when I'm at a 50-50 for RC?
Okay, so a couple different things.
What do you mean by it's harder? Yeah, why do you think it's harder when you get down to 2? Just out of curiosity.
So if I'm at a true 50-50, it means like for me, I can't either tell the difference between what they're saying or they both seem right to me. They both have like a path forward that I could make an argument it could be correct.
Well, I'm glad that you said that, because I think that the main problem that when people get down to 2 is they're thinking that they basically say the same thing. And the first thing that I do in my brain is I'm like, they never are saying the same thing. I just tell myself objectively, like it seems like they're written in this way to try to gaslight you into thinking that these are so similar that I really can't tell the difference, but they're not. And so my very first step is like, I must figure out what the difference between these answer choices is. How do I do that logistically? I'm going to go up to my first answer choice. I'm going to pause every couple words, put those in my own words, make sure that I'm understanding what they're saying as I'm going. A lot of times what happens is we read the whole answer choice like all together and we're like, oh yeah, it basically says this. And then, oh yeah, the other one basically says this. But if you pause every couple words, see how each new word adds to or changes the meaning. And that doesn't have to take too long. You'll practice it. It'll go faster. That's the very first step that I always tell everybody. And honestly, that solves a lot of people's problems. But then beyond that, we can talk through more different ways to like figure out the difference between the two.
I think look for the differences between them. Absolutely. And then also just look for an eye for what's wrong. It's like
exactly
in general,
it's just pitting the red flags against each other.
We just like are way too charitable with with the way that we take this test, where we're just like, these also sound so plausible, they all sound so good, right? And that's what makes them hard. So we just have to know that. We just have to look for, how are these different? Like, they're obviously different. How are they different? And then also, what makes these wrong? Like, it's just, it's really like a perspective thing, like a glass half empty approach. Like, these are bad.
Right. Be less nice to them. Be more mean. Yeah. Exactly.
So, I mean, I don't know. That might sound a little abstract, but I really think there's a lot to that. Just really accepting that these are two different things and one of them is unequivocally wrong. Because especially as things get hard, we try looking for the right thing, like what makes it right, like what, and these all seem so right.
And you'll get pulled in every direction in that way. Yeah,
right.
Of course, so they're written to make it seem right.
Really, like, like it's like I wish that, I was like, the image I had is like, you should tattoo it on you. You should tattoo. It's like such an important thing. Maybe something temporary. Maybe a henna tattoo that just says there are 4 wrong answers. Not for you, Olivia. This
literally.
Is
this is for anyone. But no, same. I would always. That's what I mean when I say 4 wrong answers, 1 right answer. Because you get down to 2 and you really think both are right, and no, one of them has to be wrong. One of them has to be right.
Yeah. Do you think you'd get in trouble if you had a henna tattoo that was?
I would say I actually don't know if that's allowed.
Wrong answers.
That's funny. I mean, how is that really cheating? That's also something you could just memorize.
Don't do it. We're not suggesting that.
No.
I mean, for other reasons, I would not suggest that. There are other reasons why I say you shouldn't do that beyond just if it'll work for the test. All right.
No regrets.
We've gone fairly long on this, so let's see. Looping back to so what like drills in general have we recommended? And full transparency, we had to split this up over 2 days because we ran out of time the first time because we were going long. So we're trying to, which everyone else did I
was going to say, but Alex is the only one that didn't get the memo to wear the same thing.
Not to pull back the curtain, I didn't wear the same thing as yesterday. Everyone else was way more conscientious than me.
Yeah, because we're girls.
Not disagreeing there. Yeah. Well, go ahead, Bailey.
I don't even know what I was going to say. I have no idea. Were you going to bring it back to like a wrap-up question?
Yeah, hold on.
You asked?
Yeah, so just sort of wrapping up. Like if we think back to LR, the thing that we identified is it seemed like if you take the long view at all of the tests you've taken, it's a little flat there in terms of like what questions that I'm getting wrong. It looks like it's sort of equal across the board. When we reduced the time range to more recent tests, like some clear contenders did pop out. There were the accept questions, which that is really that. I don't know. You could put together a drill of accept questions. I mean, that's not the worst idea, just to get your head in that place, but also just know it's a mechanical thing. And Bailey, you had some advice for accept questions.
Yeah, I was going to say, like, you could do that drill and just be like, okay, every single time you have to put into your own words, I'm looking for an answer that blank. I'm eliminating answers that blank. And then same thing, full elimination. I must eliminate 4 for a reason. Why? Because they didn't strengthen, blah, 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 or whatever they did strengthen, and so on.
The other thing that we saw was there were strengthening and PSAR questions. I think those were your top 3, like accept, strengthen, PSAR.
Exactly, which is good because there's some parallels between those.
Except it's just like a mechanical thing, right? It's just kind of and it's honestly a reminder thing. For me, it was like, by the end I'm done with this question for an accept question. Like I truly forget what it's about. Like I forget. Same. Because oftentimes there's like double negatives where I'm trying to weaken things, accept, and I'm like,
I definitely lose track of the directionality. Since like, especially if it's like a weaken accept or a strengthen accept, I lose track of which direction am I supposed to go for my conclusion?
Exactly. Right. So for that, I think doing a drill of accept questions and really forcing yourself to go through the workflow for that, like in the same way that you have a workflow for the other question types, like for accept, like. For me, at least, it was constantly reminding myself what the question was and constantly rephrasing it to myself, like with every new answer choice, because I will straight up forget. I will choose the right answer for the wrong question, like because I have forgotten what the question is.
Same.
And then
I kind of chuckled myself. Oh, sorry.
No, what?
I was just saying, I just chuckled myself when I'm going down those answer choices because like I have to rephrase it every time. Like I'm looking for what? I'm eliminating what? And then I go back, I reread. Like trust yourself. Just let yourself do that. My last advice on that is like...
I just want to clarify, it sounded like I was mad at you.
I honestly wasn't even listening to what you were saying, so who cares?
I'm so self-conscious about the people, how things sound versus how things look. I'm like, people couldn't see my face. Go ahead.
Whatever. Shoot, what was I going to say? Oh, do the accept questions drill untimed. And like, don't worry about the timing for that. Just focus on getting a good workflow. And then maybe you do another 10 question accept drill where you do it more timed. But first things first, just get yourself into a good workflow. And then for this, probably something similar for those.
Yeah. I mean, you can look for the similarity between those, right? Because that is the thing is PSAR is just a specific type of strengthening, right? So, like it fits certain criteria. And for PSAR, you can really just take this formula of like premise, like you are looking for something that's triggered by the premise that results in the conclusion. And like,
Yeah.
once I really internalize that, those questions become fun, honestly, because they're
Yes,
also
it's like you just have to check the two boxes. Yeah.
and they're not as, they don't need to be as airtight as a sufficient assumption. It doesn't need to create
squishier.
a valid argument, right? And so it's just something that sort of like that does what you need it to do, that's triggered by that premise, results in the conclusion, but it doesn't have as high a bar. And then I would also take those wrong answers, look at that. That's where the wrong answer journal and all the work you're doing there is going to be so fruitful. Looking at the strengthening and PSAR questions that you get wrong and seeing if there are deeper similarities between them. Is there certain types of reasoning that you're struggling with beyond just the question type? So I think generally drills targeting accept, drills targeting strengthening and PSAR, maybe even putting together a drill of both those questions together, because you are doing similar things in both of them. And then doing work after those drills, after your PTs, to look for, are there deeper commonalities between these questions that I'm getting? And then for RC, do you want to just sum up Bailey, you really took the wheel there.
I love helping people get better at RC because I hated it so much. Like I really just struggled with that thing. So yeah, no, I was saying the first 2 passages in 15-minute drills, the last 2 passages in 20-minute drills, just go through, like section out some PTs or full sections, that you can break down into those halves. And then honestly, by the way, the first time that I recommend doing those, I do it untimed for myself, or like untimed literally, but like telling myself to keep myself at the pace that I kind of feel like I'm doing when I'm doing PTs, just to see how long it takes you baseline. Because like chances are you might be rushing through those first 2 passages faster than you have to. Like we'll just see kind of like how it plays out more over time. And then if you end up spending more time or less time, you could just focus on tapering yourself down to about that 15 minutes. And then in real time, I just give myself, like when I see the 20 minutes left on the clock, I'm like, okay, you have to move on to passage 3. By the way, I usually, like if I have a couple more questions and I realize that it's 20 minutes left, I don't just like force myself to stop my thought process. I'm going to be like, okay, you got 2 minutes to wrap it up, girl. 18 minutes, that's your hard cutoff. You got to move on to passage 3. Because otherwise, you're going to be giving yourself less than 9 minutes per each of those last 2 passages. What if they're both 4-star, 5-star? Who knows? I'm just going to make sure that I'm setting myself up for success.
I did that on LR too, for people who are struggling with that.
Yeah,
just as a way of also just sort of, it was less so a hard cutoff and more for me to know, to just sort of gauge what's my pace at. Like this is the halfway point. I would give myself a little bit less than halfway to get there. And that way I could just kind of, I didn't have to like have my eyes on the clock at all moments, wondering where it was. It just gave me
I used to be doing like crazy calculations that probably weren't even accurate, trying to figure out like how much time I had left for each individual question. And like, why was that a useful? It wasn't helpful.
Yeah. And then I think briefly we can just touch on like some mindset stuff that we got into at the beginning, which is I just think like, in general, you're clearly doing very well on this test. You've made a lot of progress, and it's non-linear, as we saw, which is true for me and most other people. It goes up and down.
Same.
And it's a super frustrating part of this exam. But I think one, it's always good to take stock of how much growth you have made, because you can just feel like you're not doing anything, there's no forward progress. And I'm sure it felt that way at other times when you look back. You actually have made progress since then. So, you are playing the long game. You're doing all the right things. We talked a little bit yesterday about like what the feeling was when you were taking that exam where you scored your highest, right? And would you remind us? I think you're saying like the pressure was really off in that moment.
Definitely, yeah. The pressure was significantly reduced because I wasn't working towards like a specific deadline anymore. And I just remember like sitting down and knowing this score does not matter at all. And no one knows that I'm taking this test.
Perfect. You're going to tell yourself the same exact thing.
And it's really true. It's really true about
I'm like
any
in the
test.
pockets. I'm like, guys, this doesn't matter.
They don't even know. Yeah.
It's really true though. Yeah. It's true about any test. I mean, the thing is, even, and I know that okay, yeah, if you with like schools can see that you took a test, even still, that just doesn't matter. It doesn't matter.
They don't care as much as you think that they do.
That big of a deal. So really, any official test that you take, like, and I know there are people listening to this at home being like, wait, but this test really matters for me. And I'm like, I know, I'm not saying this test doesn't matter, but this is the counterintuitive thing. the more that you let go of that, like as we saw, Olivia's a great case study. The more that you let go of those expectations, that pressure on yourself, the better you're going to do. So if you're sitting there saying, well, you don't get it. For me, I need this score. And for me, this sitting for this test actually does matter. I'm like, for sure, it does matter. But the more that you can take the pressure off yourself, the more that you can accept that, like, actually, no matter what happens tomorrow, if tomorrow's your test day, you'll be okay.
Oh my God,
the
true.
better you're going to do on that test,
Right.
So
true.
like, finding ways to just remind yourself of that, even as you approach your official tests, that, and this is the luxury you've given yourself too, by playing the long game, saying, like, I'm just going to apply when I'm ready, when I have the score that I want. You've set yourself up for where that literally is the case. It's okay if you don't get the score that you want. Of course, we would like you to get it as soon as possible, but it's okay. And that's going to help you get there quicker, honestly. It's very counterintuitive.
Well,
you have to let go to get it. It reminds me of, okay, there's real quick. I remember reading about this thing where it was this game and it hooks you up to sensors that measure your sort of signs of anxiety, like your heart rate, your like,
I began that game.
Like sweat, muscle tension, that sort of thing. And two people sit across from each other and they get a baseline of those readings for each other. And there's like a ball in the middle of the table. And the more relaxed you are, the more the ball goes towards the other person. So like to win the game, you have to just let go.
Yeah, it's like the Chinese finger trap. Like
exactly.
The only way to get out is to like not
try that hard. Yes, that's so true.
Yeah.
There's so many things that are like that. There's so many parallels.
Namely the LSAT. Anyways, do you feel like you got what you wanted out of today and yesterday, Olivia?
Yeah, definitely. No, this has been super helpful. I think I can do more work, even just in terms of like using the analytics page, and changing up my drilling strategy, like becoming more reflective, not just taking notes, but revisiting the notes, and breaking them apart. So yeah, really appreciate your guys' help.
Well, we'll look forward to seeing you around 7Sage campus, as it were.
I was like, where did we run into her? Like,
well, you've been to live class, live sessions.
True.
Virtually.
Yes.
Come back to let us know how things. We'll check in.
We'll check in.
And
I need a redemption arc, guys. So
you're in the middle of it.
Honestly, you've already been
redemption. There's no redemption. Redemption implies that you
you're
failed.
Like, pick your worst.
I feel like you mess up. Oh, true. Yeah. Also, by the way, just to clear, just for some context, we did just go back. Like, we chose a PT where she had missed a few more on RC so that we could get that picture. She's doing better on RC right now.
Okay, I've got motivation now.
Yeah,
exactly.
I'll be back.
But if anyone at home wants to do this, we're looking for more people to do this. So again, literally no one emails us. So just comment on YouTube. But also there is an email, podcast@7sage.com.
You guys could email us and we'll feel really special.
Our social media is now up and running across the board. So you can comment, get in touch with us on Instagram. Like,
wait, literally right now, like you posted something?
No, once we post this.
Oh, okay.
We're posting this next week. Next week is when we're starting. Our social media channels have been around, technically.
The Renaissance.
They've been very dormant. Yeah.
Right. They have
you're here
so
for the
dormant.
come up. Yeah. All right.
Do you guys want to ever go look at our TikTok? Me and Alex have like one TikTok up there. There's more where that came from.
Yeah. All right. Thank you, Olivia. Thank you for making time for us over the course of 2 days. And I think that this is super valuable for a lot of people. So I'm very happy with how this turned out. That's all. We'll see all the rest of you again soon. Thanks, Olivia.
Bye.
Thank you.